Welcome to Mentoring Kings, the Black History Edition, saluting the men who inspire our youth to build upon the African American legacy. This docuseries tributes the community-driven change agents whose wisdom, experience, and hands-on work empowers young people to rise above adversity and rise to today's challenges. And hear the life-affirming story of Dr. Eddie Connor, who overcame a near-fatal cancer diagnosis and dedicated his life to helping heal the mind, body, and soul. You're tuned into Mentoring Kings, the Black History Edition. This segment is brought to you by GMC. If one looks up the definition of overcoming adversity, Dr. Eddie Connor's picture will be there. The acclaimed author, lecturer, and philanthropist survived a life-threatening condition, inspiring him to enrich the lives of others.
I've always loved school. My favorite two classes in school were gym and lunch. You know, I love to chase the girls in gym and then sit down and eat with them at lunch. And, was a kid who actually grew up playing violin. I grew up playing violin and was in the Detroit Symphony Orchestra and was one of the youngest members. I might have been a hip hop violinist today, but I got teased out of it. You know, they teased me so bad. My father's from the West Indies, so my parents are missionaries and ministers to the island of Jamaica. And so grew up there playing soccer, and then came back here to the States, picked up, of course, the basketball. And I'd been having these chest pains for quite some time. And, as men, or even boys becoming men, we see pain as weakness leaving the body. Oftentimes, masculinity and vulnerability cannot coexist in the same space. That vulnerability is oftentimes deemed as femininity. And I didn't want to tell anybody about the pain that I was experiencing. The doctors think that it's a punctured lung or an asthma attack or some type of cold or flu or pneumonia. They can't do much with me. They take me to another hospital. They do a CT scan of the chest and they need to take me to surgery immediately. Felt great coming out of surgery. Doctor says, Eddie, we have a diagnosis for you. He said, you have what we call non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He says you have stage 4 cancer. And right there, you're dealing with, you just hit with the whole aspect of will I live, will I die? You're dealing with depression. My own biological father never even visited me one day in the hospital. And so to live through dying places and to find a can of cancer, to have a praying mama, it's totally a blessing to be able to live through dying places and still be here.
Dr. Connor's diagnosis and survival was the catalyst for his life's new trajectory.
God uses your setback as a setup for your greatest comeback. He turns your seeming tragedy into strategy. And I was trying to figure out what the strategy was in my life. I'm sitting in my guidance counselor's office as a junior, getting ready to go into my senior year. And she says, you know what, Eddie, you're not going to college. Matter of fact, don't even think about community college. Pick up a trade. I don't even think you have what it takes to get to college. She was looking at where I was, but not where I was going. And I said, you know what? She doesn't think that I can overcome and make it through to another place in my life and really do something positive. I already beat cancer. And I wrote an essay to Eastern Michigan University telling them why I should be admitted into the school. My grades, I didn't meet the GPA. I didn't meet the SAT or the ACT score. And they took me in on probation. Went into education and began to mentor young people. And I saw these students coming in from all parts of Michigan, underserved, underrepresented, the least, the less. And I began to see myself in these young people. And I really took a liking to mentoring our brothers, especially, really empowering them. That really pushed me and spurred me ahead to actually become an educator and teach for 12 years in the high school system.
After achieving what others thought was impossible, Dr. Connor returned to share his gifts with the community.
Oftentimes when Black men leave or graduate from school, we don't return back to schools. Dr. George Frazier said, once you learn and earn, then you must return back to your communities. That's how I began to really move into the space and place of mentoring, to let our young people know you can do something positive. And actually having a love for literature, me writing books, but now developing a mentorship program that was focused on books, that being Boys to Books, focused on literacy, leadership, and life skills enrichment. But I always had an interest in books and reading and learning and development. And so I said, you know what? I've already done this master's. Let me just go ahead. Let me just keep on going. And from there, one of my former professors said, hey, you know, there's an opening. One of our professors is actually moving out of state. We would love for you to fill in and as an adjunct. And so really began to do both. I teach during the day, and then especially after completing my doctorate, I would be a professor and teach at night. And just decided to come up with an academy focused on faith, identity, relationship, speaker training. We have weekly sessions, which are focused on any of those topics. We talk about the whole aspect of relationships. We talk about overcoming imposter syndrome, how to really get some traction behind your goals. What are the characteristics of a positive man? What are the characteristics of a positive woman? What do men want? What are the needs of a woman? We talk about all of those hard topics and conversations. We just opened up the new year talking about breaking bad habits. You know, the 2022 is going to be the same old year for you if you don't change your mind, much less change what you're doing. I really believe a job is what you're paid for, but your calling is what you're made for. I discovered really what I was called to do, especially empowering people to overcome obstacles while I was teaching in the classroom. I really began to see, as I was in my master's, I worked on just a little project, and I was just playing around. And I said, let me call this Boys to Books. My professor really enjoyed it, the presentation about how I would use literacy in the classroom. About a month or so later, looking at all the research that I did, looking at my thesis, and said, I need to employ this in the classroom where I'm at. And as a result of really instituting that program, I began to work as an assistant in Congress, former Congressman Hanson Clark in the city of Detroit, 13th District. And I just became just a liaison at first, and then I wound up becoming just a personal body person. He said, you know what? I want to put you in contact with some of my constituents in D.C. to see what we can do to really mediate and bolster literacy amongst African American and Hispanic males in America. He wound up standing on the floor of Congress with a Republican black man, Tim Scott, out of South Carolina. Wound up getting bipartisan support. Of course, didn't become legislation, but it became a resolution, HRES 721. We both put it to rest for about a year. We found out that President Barack Obama was using much of our language that we developed from our resolution to develop the My Brother's Keeper initiative. And I'm connected with a program called Black Male Engagement out of Miami. And the focus is just championing and celebrating the work that Black men are already doing across America. And so I was one of 62 Black men across America to be able to receive a plaque signed by President Barack Obama, as well as a gold medal. I thought I was in the Olympics for a minute, but it felt like I was running long distance from all the work that I've been trying to do. But you say, hey, I need to get to know what you do. You're doing what I'm doing over here. How can we partner together right here? And really seeing your brother not as competition, but as a place of collaboration.
Dr. Connor teaches us there can be more than just second chances in life. The chances to excel can be unlimited if one invests in themselves. We'll have more on Eddie Connor's amazing journey, only here on the Mentoring Kings Black History Edition, presented by GMC. Blacks are boldly going where many have never gone before, from outer space to high finance. U.S. Navy Commander and pilot Victor J. Glover became the first African American to work at the International Space Station for an extended stay, while 20-somethings Sheck Kamara and Ermias Tedeschi co-founded Black Gen Capital, Cornell University's first Black investment fund. And still we rise. You're watching Mentoring Kings, the Black History Edition, honoring the men who honored the youth. Here's part 2 of our conversation with author Dr. Eddie Connor, who's motivating young people by breaking down what the letters FAITH can mean in their lives.
I tell them all the time, hey, you're not a young thug, you're a young scholar. You're not a pariah or predator, you're a provider and a protector. You're not somebody who's going to do 4 years in a prison house. You're going to do 4 years at Morehouse. You're not going to go to jail. You're going to go to Cornell and Yale. Being able to push that and then also embody it and let them know, hey, I'm learning just like you are. I'm taking some time when I go home to work on my studies. I'm not holding you to a standard that I'm not going to meet myself. And I realize life teaches you in two ways, mistakes and mentors. It's best to learn from the mistakes of a mentor than to make your own.
Dr. Eddie Conner believes that mentoring should also include literacy.
You know, the average American only reads one book past graduating high school. And I wanted our young men to be lifelong learners because life is a classroom. And I wanted to provide mentorship with literacy. Oftentimes with mentorship groups, what we see is just the whole aspect of, this is how you dress for success. This is how you should speak. Look at somebody, shake their hand, give them eye contact. These are some steps that are ingredients for manhood, but oftentimes a lot of mentorships do not have the literacy component. Finding the can of cancer, because that really became the engine for all the rest of them, and really being transparent, really sharing my story, really putting my pain on paper, turning it into power, moving into a place of vulnerability, which I was really hesitant to do. My brother's keeper. Much of the work I do now, especially when you think about mentoring, is because of what I didn't have. Didn't really have the mentors in my life. And the ones that did come about, I'm grateful for, like a former principal of mine, Mr. Ivory. Two white men during my time of going through cancer stepped up in my life. One to tutor me, one to take me to a baseball game and just give me some words of encouragement. A businessman right now, Mr. Jay Melton, who gives me insight.
Faith, identity, relationship, and speaker training make up Dr. Conner's first model.
Being raised as a Christian young man, coming from a household of ministers, knowing that I wouldn't have been able to even beat cancer if it wasn't for my faith in God. Then another part of our first model is the I for identity. If you don't know who you are, people will tell you what you're not. And oftentimes, you buying into negative philosophy causes you to move into a place of stinking thinking. People have to have a renewed mind. What were you created to do? Why do you want what you want out of life? Who are you? What are the type of individuals that you want coming with you on your journey to greatness? Are you a friend to yourself? Or is the greatest enemy the inner me? Being able to define what someone's identity is beyond just their driver's license, beyond just their ID that they show. What is their real personal identity? Of course, the R for the first model is relationships. And it's the relationship primarily with yourself first, because that becomes the engine, that becomes the flow of how anybody's going to relate to everybody else in their world. Loving themselves, knowing their worth. And oftentimes we just castigate that to just women, but it's also for us as men too. We have to have a standard. We have to have values. We have to have principles that we live by, that we will not vacillate on. And as a result of that, the relationships are not just focused on romantic, but it's also business. It's also how to understand what the people factor is. It's also how to build new friendships. It's also how to understand how to use your personality in a different way. If you are more so introvert, how can you adopt some extroverted aspects to your life that push you out of your comfort zone? And the S&T speaks for speaker training. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that is listening to your own voice. That is hearing yourself as you record yourself speaking and actually cringing when watching it. You only get better by practicing it, by rehearsing, and by putting yourself in different instances and aspects to be able to develop who you are and use your words as a paintbrush to impact the world. Dr. Miles Monroe said every problem is a business. And I really saw that we have to get down to business in saving our sons, in securing their manhood and their masculinity and their identity. because these are the leaders not just of tomorrow, but of today.
Since he did not have his father in the home, Dr. Conner speaks on what he believes leads to a successful marriage.
You know, when you think about marriage in America, one of the highest rates of marriage was during the 60s, especially during those times of segregation and during those times of civil rights movement. We saw black men in the household due to certain aspects in legislation and in government. We saw the black men being removed out of the household. We saw the feminist movement, which came on the rise oftentimes, and it really was not necessarily a fight for the black woman. It was more so a fight for the white woman versus the white man, but the black woman got brought into that. We saw the level of independency and of course, women having to move into a place of taking ownership of the household because the black man was not there. I'm worried because it seems as if we have a generation that's more so focused on the ring and the wedding than the marriage. You know, the wedding is a sprint, the marriage is a marathon. And oftentimes, carrots without character is chaotic. And I think so many times people are so focused on love. Love is something that you should already have internally, and the right person will complement what you already have versus you searching for it. Love is the thread, but purpose is the glue. And I believe you can't expect a purpose partner if you have not first partnered with your purpose. More than just finding somebody who's going to love you, you need to find somebody who's going to complement the purpose and the value that you have and that God gave you. But sometimes we're gorilla glued to the wrong person. And we need to unhook, we need to detach, we need to heal, we need to find a level of wholeness within ourselves. And I think that's what it's about.
Deeds, not words, is the mantra of Dr. Eddie Conner, but his words have inspired thousands of youth to be active participants in their own destiny. We'll be right back with more Mentoring Kings, the Black History Edition, presented by GMC. Thanks for watching this special edition of Mentoring Kings, the Black History Edition. And thanks to all of the Kingmakers featured today. Keep doing the good work, fighting the good fight, and uplifting the youth to be future kings and kingmakers. See you next time.